My pork roast in the oven with apples and onions is going to be amazing. My Mississippi pot roast recipe was an absolute success, so I thought about giving a pork roast a try. Here I have a pork butt roast. It's a little over 2 pounds. I seared it on all sides. Is that absolutely critical? No, but it's going to add a ton of flavor to your meat. All I did is I took a pan, added 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of canola oil, brought it up to heat on medium heat, and then just turned the roast around so that all sides were brown. It took maybe 15 to 20 minutes. I think that this pork butt roast had a bit more oil, or excuse me, a bit more fat than the chuck eye roast. So I think that next time I'll add less oil to the pan, and then I will put the side that has a lot of fat down to render that out so that I don't have to add as much canola oil to the pan. I can use some of the fat that is on the meat. Like I said, I'm going to add apples and onions to this roast. So here I have one whole apple that I'm going to leave like that as an experiment, and then I'm going to chop up another apple. I am using Golden Delicious, but I think Granny Smith would work. I think anything that is not super sweet. So I would not use Fuji. I would not use Honeycrisp, but if you want to, I think it would probably still be good. I have one large purple onion that I'm going to add to the roast as well, along with one large baking potato, one small sweet potato, a red potato, half of a large carrot, a celery stick, a small yellow onion, and 3 cloves of garlic. Although I usually like to use my homemade vegetable stock for roast and things like that, since I'm using apples, I'm going to use apple juice as the liquid, along with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. However, I don't want the pan drippings to taste like dessert, so I'm going to add some vegetables. I think that the celery and the carrot that I normally add to the vegetable stock will add some nice vegetable flavor, along with the spices I'm going to add. Half a teaspoon each of black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and likely salt as well. 1 packet of onion soup mix, a few bay leaves, and that's it. I will bring you back when I'm done chopping the vegetables. I'm done chopping my apples and potatoes, so now I'm going to add them to the casserole dish. I am using a 9x13 dish. All of the vegetables are now in the pan. I did add another small baking potato because there's some extra space. The celery I put down on the bottom, and then I put some smaller pieces of sweet potato and the small onion on top of it. I don't really care for celery. My intention is that it's going to flavor the broth, and then help the other vegetables stay above the level of the liquid. My goal is to have some of the vegetables in the roast in the liquid and part out, because in that way I think I have a good combination of moist cooking and dry cooking. My vegetables are already starting to turn brown, the apples, things like that. So I'm going to pour over 1 cup of apple juice over the roast and over the apples, potatoes, onions, everything. Now it's time to add even more flavor to this roast. This is the pan that I used to brown the pork butt roast. I added 1 cup of apple juice, turn on the heat just for a minute or two to scrape any bits that were left on the bottom. You don't want to miss those. Now I'm going to add 1 packet of onion soup mix to dissolve. And after I stir and dissolve it. I'm then going to add my spices. There we go. Mix. Nice and easy. And now that everything is mixed, I'm just going to simply pour it over the vegetables and the roast itself. And now for the finishing touches. Here I have half a cup of apple cider vinegar. Some people may want to use only a quarter cup. I used half a cup of the pepperoncini juice when I made the Mississippi pot roast, so I think half a cup is going to be good. But if you just want to use a quarter of a cup and then maybe a quarter of a cup of water or extra apple cider or extra apple juice, I'm sure that would be fine. Pouring that over the meat and the vegetables. I have some bay leaves. Some little bay leaves volunteered to go in first, so they're already in there. I would say 2 to 3 bay leaves. I really like bay leaf. I think it's a secret ingredient in a lot of things, but if you want to leave it out, I'm sure you could. Half a teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to sprinkle that over everything. I'm sure you could get away with a quarter teaspoon, but since I use half a teaspoon of all the other spices, just makes life easy. And now half a cup of apple juice. So 3 cups of liquid total. I'm sure you could use vegetable stock, whatever you have on hand, but apple and pork or anything sweet with pork works really well, so it just makes sense to me to use apple juice. So you're gonna pour that over the meat, the vegetables, potatoes. Awesome. This already looks and smells great. My oven is preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna cover this with foil. Now my roast is ready for the oven. My pork pot roast with apples and onions has been in the oven covered at 350 Fahrenheit for 2 hours. You can see everything's looking really good. I tasted the liquid and it's amazing. Now I'm going to baste some of the liquid on the meat. Then I'm going to put it back into the oven uncovered for an hour total, probably 40 minutes, maybe 30 with the heat on, and then the rest of the time with the heat off, just like with the Mississippi pot roast. My roast is now ready to serve. It was in at 350 covered for 2 hours. Then I uncovered it and let it continue cooking after basting the meat at 350 for 40 minutes. Then I turned off the heat and left it in the oven for 20 minutes. Now it's been out of the oven for about 10. It looks amazing. Time to dig in. This pork pot roast in the oven turned out beautifully. Just to summarize what I did, it baked covered with foil at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours. Then I took the pan out of the oven and basted both the meat and the vegetables with the liquid. Then I put it back into the oven once again at 350, but this time uncovered for 40 minutes. And then I turned off the oven, leaving the pot roast in the oven for 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes with the oven off and the roast uncovered were up, I took it out of the oven and let it cool down to serve. I know it sounds like a bit of, as the Argentines would say, quilombo, or a bit of mess and hassle. This pork pot roast in the oven with apples and onions was absolutely delicious, so it was definitely worth it. The meat was juicy, tender, and absolutely delicious. Searing the meat added a ton of flavor. In fact, as I was eating, I could tell which parts of the meat were seared better than others because the parts that had a better sear were definitely more flavorful. The foil and then the basting locked in the juices. So like I said, the meat was absolutely fantastic. The vegetables were equally delicious. The texture was really awesome as well, since most of the pieces of vegetables cooked partly in the liquid and partly out of the liquid. The potatoes, onions, and apples were soft on the inside, yet had a nice crisp on the outside. However, what most surprised me about this pork pot roast in the oven with apples and onions was just how flavorful the liquid was. The liquid in the pan was so full of flavor, it was incredible. It was sweet, of course, because of the apple juice and the apples, but not too sweet because of the apple cider vinegar and all of the vegetables. I honestly think that the apple cider vinegar in this pork pot roast in the oven is the secret ingredient. Because a lot of times, in a lot of dishes, something acidic in the background helps to balance everything out. Along with the bay leaf, which is one of my favorite ingredients, the spices, and the onion soup mix, this liquid was absolutely fantastic. And it was absolutely perfect to pour over the meat, the vegetables, and of course some rice on the side. Honestly, I knew that this pork pot roast in the oven was going to turn out well, but it turned out even better than I had anticipated. So if you're looking for something new yet still familiar, definitely give this recipe a try. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.